a sort of a bounty gun.
He said he fired to get us to stop. He didn't mean to hit me. And it wasn't much because the bullet just fell right out. After a little while, I mean, nobody had to pull it out.
That was really more of a warning shot than anything else. He told us the reason he fired was to just scare us into breaking, that there was never actually any intent to shoot me. And actually, it wasn't even serious because the bullet did just kind of fall out on its own after a while. No surgeon had to extract it, no operation was required. On screen, he dispatched bad guys with icy efficiency. But off camera, Charles Bronson's actual animosity wasn't directed at make-believe foes, but at his fellow performers in Hollywood. In a rare and incendiary revelation before his death, the iconically stone-faced actor publicly professed that there were 6 actors in specific whom he utterly loathed. His insults were biting. He dismissed them as liars, cowards, and clowns, spoken with the same chilling remoteness that made him a legend. For a man who seldom said more than he had to, his bitterness went shockingly deep. And now that the cat is out of the bag, the truth tells an unforgettable story. James Garner. Of all the conflicts Charles Bronson wrestled with throughout his career, none seemed to leave a deeper psychological mark on him than his long-standing feud with actor James Garner. Their troubled relationship started on the set of The Great Escape in 1963, and according to nearly everyone involved in it, the tension never completely melted away. Bronson, already notorious for his chilly attitude and distrust of Hollywood glitz, in Garner saw everything he disliked. And Garner, discovering Bronson's coldness to be impenetrable, tried not at all to build a bridge. They were bound for trouble from the beginning. Garner's charm, his easy smile, and his background in comedic television made him have a style that lightened the atmosphere on almost any set. His combination of humor and heroism had gained him hissy mobs of adoring fans. But Bronson cared nothing for that sort of affection. He approached every production like a soldier at war, silent, reserved, and intent only on the work at hand. For Garner, filmmaking was cooperative, even lighthearted at times. For Bronson, it was brutal work. Reports from the production indicate the tension between them was instantaneous. Garner tried to reach out to Bronson, but was greeted with curt responses or taciturn indifference. In his memoir, The Garner Files, he would go on to say Bronson was very hard to get to know and even more difficult to like. Garner said Bronson's gruffness wasn't script attitude, it was the real guy. Garner perceived arrogance in Bronson's taciturnity, and Bronson saw Garner's affability as insincere and superficial. The crew of The Great Escape became a frosty battleground for them. Other cast members, including Steve McQueen and Richard Attenborough, grew close during idle time, but Bronson and Garner were standoffish. There were no fierce arguments, but neither was there any warmth. Garner has since confirmed that the chill between them never thawed, and that Bronson appeared to bear the animosity well after production had ceased. Bronson prized toughness, loyalty, and a nearly old-fashioned masculinity. To Bronson, Garner represented the opposite. Bronson's existence had been marked by poverty in Pennsylvania coal country, and his roughened features attested to that history. By contrast, Garner seemed to get along in Hollywood on charm and easy rapport. Whether or not it was fair, that disparity secured Bronson's dislike forever. What's particularly revealing about this grudge is that Bronson never let up. Most of his peers, McQueen, Newman, Brando, fought and made up. Bronson was not constructed that way. He kept grudges smoldering like a personal blacklist, and James Garner's name remained on that list for life. This constant enmity contributed to Bronson's aura. His grudges were not publicity stunts. They were personal beliefs. Garner was not just a coworker he did not like. To Bronson, he represented everything about Hollywood's superficial culture that he mistrusted. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Sylvester Stallone. In the 1970s, when the cinema was changing, Bronson remained steadfast as the personification of raw masculinity. He did not smile gratuitously, he did not make high camp speeches, and he never went all out melodramatically. That was on purpose. He constructed his character on few words and presence. To him, genuine strength was stoic, unwavering, and unadorned. Therefore, When Hollywood started glorifying method-trained performers who were famous for emotional collapses and mental pyrotechnics, Bronson shuddered. He referred to them as the sensitive generation, and he did not say it with fondness. At the focus of his attack were Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Sylvester Stallone, three of the most dominant stars of the time. All three earned praise by playing anguished, brooding characters. Bronson felt that they were taking Hollywood down the wrong path, substituting raw realism for self-indulgent theatrics. "They're all cut from the same cloth," Bronson once sneered, deriding what he felt was their overmourning and undifferentiable mannerisms. His disdain wasn't solely about method acting, it was about philosophy of methods. He regarded them as icons of a cultural turn toward fragility rather than strength. Pacino's incendiary monologues in Serpico and Dog Day Afternoon earned him accolades for explosive energy. For Bronson, they were sound and fury, signifying nothing. His own maxim was straightforward. Why shout when a stare can say it all? De Niro, who was famous for his immersion in characters such as Travis Bickle or Jake LaMotta, left critics awed by his makeovers. Bronson brushed it off as vanity, an actor's trick. He was of the opinion that a natural character should arise from within, not as a result of obsessive imitation. Even Stallone, whose movies appeared to be nearer to Bronson's genre, wasn't spared his condemnation. For Bronson, the Rocky movies wallowed in sentiment, while the Rambo films submerged themselves in egotism. Stallone, he believed, clad rough power with emotional melodrama, a combination Bronson considered insincere. His dismissal of them wasn't based on jealousy, but principle. Bronson was from a school of thought where actors did not talk about process, did not delve into psychology, and did not flaunt vulnerability. Pain was done in stoicism and grit. That was the Bronson way. Over time, Hollywood celebrated the very attributes he disdained, presenting Oscars to Pacino, De Niro, and Stallone. Bronson, on the other hand, stuck in his own rut, a relic of an earlier time, grizzled, gravel-voiced, and unyielding, never pausing to cry on film. Ingmar Bergman. Charles Bronson made his career on restraint, clenched faces, quietness, and unadorned physical presence. He didn't think pain needed to be analyzed in the protracted monologues of anguished characters or thought about at length in interminable dialogue. For Bronson, action told more of the story than words ever could. So when iconic Swedish filmmaker Ingmar Bergman asked him to work with him, Bronson not only declined, he ridiculed. Critic Roger Ebert once floated the suggestion publicly, envisioning Bronson in a Bergman movie. Bergman films, such as The Seventh Seal and Persona, explored despair, death, and the condition of man. To film buffs, they were masterworks, but Bronson scoffed at them. Why would anybody pay to see that illness, he said bluntly. To him, movies like these were celebrating weakness, not strength. It wasn't just Bergman's work he eschewed, it was the whole school of thought of intellectual navel-gazing movies. Where fans saw depth, Bronson sensed excess. Where they commended vulnerability, he sensed weakness. His response wasn't designed to shock. It was just who he was. Grown up in backbreaking poverty in coal country, Bronson lived through adversity that demanded survival, not self-reflection. The idea of spending hours sitting in front of characters crying or thinking about death was, to him, not only boring but insulting. Bergman was a style of art Bronson did not actually believe in. Bergman stars like Liv Ullmann and Max von Sydow flourished under him, becoming international stars. But Bronson was in no mood to go down that route. He wasn't interested in reinventing himself in art house films. His domain was westerns, thrillers, and war films, and he was glad of it. Wailing in black and white, soliloquies over the despair of life was the opposite of his persona. His dismissal of Bergman solidified the image the world saw Bronson as the action man, not interested in pretentious introspection. Even in his personal life, he did so. He shunned Hollywood parties, kept quiet, and never idealized his stardom. His disdain for serious movies wasn't a publicity stunt. It was his reality, and that reality had no room for Bergman's technique. Elvis Presley. Of all the rivalries that tinctured Bronson's life, the most singular was his cold encounter with Elvis Presley. While his more famous rivalries were professional, this one was personal and born of one social encounter. Bronson and Presley never co-starred, but when they met up in the late 1960s or early 1970s, fireworks erupted. Bronson was starting to become famous for his tough roles in movies, such as The Dirty Dozen and Once Upon a Time in the West, while Elvis was still riding the wave of his king reputation. At social gatherings, Presley was accustomed to adoration. Surrounded by loyal followers, he was used to reverence. When he approached Bronson with friendly curiosity, he expected at least cordiality. What he got instead was Bronson's trademark indifference bordering on mockery. Bronson wasn't impressed with Elvis's star presence. He appeared puzzled by the theatrics of Presley's demeanor and the adoration of his groupies. Where fans perceive charisma, Bronson perceived showmanship, and he wasn't afraid to express that opinion. According to those present, Bronson remarked that Elvis's fame rested more on image than talent. He even called him a muscle-bound smart aleck, mocking his reliance on martial arts and bodybuilding to project toughness. For Presley, who longed to be respected as a serious man and actor, Bronson's dismissal stung. It wasn't the words. It was the tone that stripped away any pretense of glamour. Elvis, who seethed at disrespect, left the meeting humiliated and enraged. He allegedly instructed his staff to ensure that he never had to share space with Bronson again. For Bronson, the episode probably meant nothing. He did not go out of his way to trash Elvis, but did not fawn over him either. His detachment in a flattery-based culture may have been the biggest insult of all. The incident faded over time, overshadowed by larger events in both men's careers. Yet it remains a sharp example of Bronson's nature. Unimpressed, unmoved, and unwilling to bow to celebrity worship, even when the king himself was involved. Lee Marvin. Both Charles Bronson and Lee Marvin were already iconic tough guy stars by 1981 when Death Hunt went into production. Together on screen, they promised pyrotechnics. Behind the camera, however, it disintegrated into a profound collision. Marvin was famous not only for his brilliance, but for his excesses, too. A hard drinker with a reputation for unpredictability, he brought chaos to every set. Bronson, stoic and disciplined, had zero patience for that. Since the first day of Death Hunt, Marvin's drinking had been causing problems, lateness fights, and missed rehearsals. Bronson, punctual and professional, regarded it as a disrespect to the profession. When others took Marvin's antics lightly, Bronson became colder by the day. Bronson had always been impressed with Marvin's natural performances, but all respect he had gone out the window in the face of lack of professionalism. To Bronson, acting was hard work, not an excuse for indulgence. Their relationship had become so corrupted that when Marvin passed away in 1987, Bronson made no attempt to hide his contempt. Unlike others who paid him respect during his funeral, Bronson avoided him. He released no tribute, no condolences, just silence. For Bronson, silence was his judgment. He viewed Marvin as having violated the unwritten rule of professionalism and respect for one another. Bronson's inability to forgive was very much in his character. In his view, Marvin had betrayed the discipline that characterized manhood and work ethic, and that was unconscionable. Michael Winner. No actor-director duo was as infamous as Charles Bronson and Michael Winner. Their collaborations, especially the Death Wish franchise, made Bronson an international vigilante sensation. Yet, their pairing was volatile from the beginning. Michael Winner, flashy and boorish, lived on noise and publicity. Bronson, privately intense and well-disciplined, lived on quiet. Their energies clashed constantly. The first Death Wish was a smash, but by the sequels Bronson had grown tired of Winner's style. He thought the director recycled old formulas and turned productions into shallow spectacles. By Death Wish 3, Bronson was openly mocking the project as a circus and dismissing